What's up, everyone? To celebrate my Black Friday sale happening right now at ShopifyThemeDeveloper.com, I've got a unique video idea for you today. In this video, we're going to be looking in depth at some tips and tricks from other Shopify developers on LinkedIn. But first, if you're watching this video between November 29th and December 2nd, 2024, i.e. Black Friday and Cyber Monday, then head over to ShopifyThemeDeveloper.com, the website for learning Shopify theme development, to check out our huge store-wide sale. Let me assure you that these prices won't last long. But with that quick shout out of the way, let's now dive straight into talking about LinkedIn. For those of you who don't know, LinkedIn is the world's leading social network site for businesses and professionals. And in addition to allowing you to share your experience and qualifications to potential recruiters, it's also become more of a social network now, where users can grow and reach an online audience just like any other social media platform by making posts that show up on other users' homepages. So whether you're a freelancer looking for leads or just looking for your first job as a developer, I definitely recommend you jump onto LinkedIn if you haven't already. Quick side note, I actually got my first ever freelance Shopify gig through a LinkedIn DM. So let me tell you, this works. Anyways, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head onto the computer now, and I'm going to show you a few LinkedIn posts that caught my eye regarding Shopify Liquid in 2024. So the first one is from Arthur Barbe. And it's a little bit hard to see. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit more here for you guys. You can see here that he is talking about the inline asset content filter. Maybe I'll just bring up the documentation for that one. Here you can see in the official documentation within the filters section under the HTML category that we have this pretty new filter here called inline_asset_content, and it outputs the content of an inline asset in the template. So actually we can use this for other things other than SVGs, it seems, but the post is about SVGs. So if I go back to the post here, you can see Arthur Barbe in his post is skeptical of this new feature as a game changer because it has quite a lot of limitations, but it's presented as an alternative to using a snippet. Snippets these days are usually how we incorporate SVGs onto a project. So I'll give you an example from Dawn here. If I go over to Dawn 15, you can see in my snippets folder here that there are a range of snippets with the word icon in front. So here you can see all these different icons like icon-success.liquid. And as you can see here, there's typically no liquid content in them whatsoever. It's just to hold the SVG code. And then within our code, we simply use the render tag to render that snippet. So that's typically how it's done. And using snippets provides us with some other features as well. I want to show you that right now. So if I go over to my snippets in this example project, I can show you here that under snippets, I've got this icon file. I copied this from a project that I'm working on at the moment for a particular brand. And as you can see here, what I've done is I've put all the icons for the brand inside of a snippet. And then what I can do is I can use the same snippet with an argument passed into this icon parameter in order to select which specific icon I'm looking for. And that'll take the exact SVG code and put it into my project. And because this is a liquid snippet, what I can do is I can actually pass through some additional information. So here you can see under fill here for bony arrow, there were two locations in the design that I had to implement this bony arrow icon, but each had a different color. So what I did here is I put in custom color as a parameter to my snippet. Okay, so that is one of the benefits of using a snippet. You can pass in parameters. And that's essentially what the author of this LinkedIn post is saying. If we go back over to here, it'd be good if there was a parameter that we could pass in to inline asset content. Okay, so downside, you don't actually seem to be able to pass in these sort of changes into the SVG code using this filter. And that's why Arthur here seems to be skeptical. But just to test out this alternative to using snippets, I've got a blank home page here for us to work with. I'll just increase the font here so it's very clear. And then I'll upload an assets to our assets folder. So using this folder, we can actually bring in the inline code from the assets folder rather than having to create a snippet. So I'll just upload a simple SVG here, just a reviews star. And as you can see, the code is here. It'll show up exactly the same way as we would be showing a snippet, but we can't actually pass in any liquid into this SVG file. So then we go over to here, and in order to bring that in, we just type the name of the file as it appears in the assets folder. So it was reviews star.svg. and then we run it through that inline assets. What was it? Inline asset content. I'll just copy it directly from the documentation. Inline asset content. And then if I hit save and we look at that page on the front end, you can see that over here I've got my little star. So I'm going to zoom in quite a bit for this. As you can see up here, my star is quite small, but I've zoomed in by 4x. Okay, so yeah, not a game changer at all in my opinion either. I'm going to still continue to use snippets because I can pass in those parameters and I can have a single file for all assets, but an interesting change to look at nonetheless. Okay, all right, second tip here, not so much a tip, but a resource here shared by this guy, Prashant Adesanya. Okay, let's just say that's the correct pronunciation because I have no idea. But as you can see here, this guy created a Shopify Liquid REPL, or REPL, not sure how to pronounce it. And what you can do with this is you can test out Shopify Liquid code without having to run it through an actual store. And you can also add a data source via JSON and interact with it as if it was a Liquid object. So let me show you that right now. I'll click on the link, and as you can see, we have this little environment in order to play around with Liquid. So I can write in some super basic Liquid code here. I can assign variable the value of hello, and then I can, doesn't have a lot in terms of autocomplete. I can output the variable like this. Interestingly, it puts it on the third line, the same line that I wrote it over here. But perhaps what's most interesting about this particular playground is that I can add a JSON object. Here you can see what I've set previously. We can use a JSON API to bring back some data, and then we can interact with it in our Liquid as if it was a Liquid object or a Shopify object. And as you can see from this example right here, they use this fake store API. So if I just open up fake store API in my browser here, the address for this is fakestoreapi.com. Pretty simple to find. We can have a look at the different endpoints here and some example code in the case that we were running it in JavaScript. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take the endpoint, not the code itself, and then I'm going to put it over into here, add JSON, click fetch data, and you'll see status 200 okay, so it got the data, but because it's already cached the data that I had before, nothing's changed over here. But now what we can actually do is access attributes or properties of this object using Liquid over here. So what I can do, clearing this out, I can type title, and you can see the title comes back. Unfortunately, there's no arrays in here, so I can't run a loop through anything. But say, for instance, I wanted to get the rate on the rating. I could go using dot notation, rating.rate. The big limitation here, as I've written under here, is that there are no folders. So if you want to test out code like what we learned up here with the inline assets content filter, we can't do that because it doesn't have multiple folders. So just a little bit of fun here. Perhaps I might use it in future for when there's some really simple code I want to test out. For me, probably it doesn't make a lot of sense, but for a beginner, perhaps a good place to practice your Liquid knowledge and play around. But of course, there is nothing better than actually setting up a development store or a real store and just testing Liquid in real life. Perhaps more juicy is this default filter, which comes here from a really good resource on LinkedIn for Liquid developers, Octavian Contis. Here you can see that he really loves using the default filter in Liquid. I'm gonna click here to go directly to his post, and we can take a look at the screenshots that he shared here. As you can see here, we can replace this code completely using this, which is so handy. As I've written here in the Notion document, there is no ternary operator like we have in JavaScript. So oftentimes we have to write really annoying if-then statements like this. And because with Shopify Theme Development, we're typically mixing HTML and Liquid code together, we have to open up this if statement, put in our conditional, break out of Liquid, put in some HTML, break out of HTML, put in the else, break out of Liquid, and so on and so forth. As you can see here, much simpler to use the default filter, which for those of you who don't know, will put this value after the default into the output if this field right here is falsy in any way. So why don't we put this value right here directly into this attribute? And the reason why is because it might not be set at all, or it might have a null or blank value. Well, with the default filter here, this will come back as whatever it is, which I believe can only be true or false. And if for whatever reason it doesn't come back as true, we can put in false. So as you can see here, this works really nicely with if then else statements. But as you can see here on a live project that I'm working on, I'm also using it to set a default color if for whatever reason the color hasn't been set in the theme settings. Perhaps not super required here because the theme editor does have a default option as well, but it just gives us an extra level of assurance that there always is going to be a value that comes through. We're never going to get a blank value if we have the default filter added. So in this case, if for whatever reason this setting was blank, then it would default to using this value. But perhaps the most interesting way to use this default filter is something that Virgil Dubois discovered right here, that he can actually create an object in Liquid using the default filter. Now, in some of my previous content, I've talked about how it's impossible to make an object in Liquid, but now I have tested Virgil's code and I found that it actually is possible to create objects within Liquid. Is it 100% necessary? Probably not, but at least we know it's possible. So let me show you how this works. Okay, so I'm going to clear out this previous code here in the main-homepage.liquid file here, and I'm going to instead open up a Liquid tag. For those of you who don't know, we can open up a multi-line Liquid tab like this, and I'm going to paste in a variable assignment for an object. So here we go. As you can see here, I've called it obj for object. And the way we can actually create an object out of nothing with the default filter is we can use the default filter after the keyword null here, okay? As you can see here, default is quite flexible in the fact that I can put in multiple different parameters. So here you can see I have default : but then I also have title : and price : This allows me to create properties on my new object. So as you might be able to gather now, I will have an object that I can access certain attributes on. So I'll go into here, and let's say if I wanted to access the price of this object, I could type in obj.price. All right, if I hit save on that and then go, excuse me, I forgot to write echo here because we're still inside the Liquid code block. So I need to write echo if I want to output this. Echo is essentially the same as writing it like this. Because we're still in Liquid, we need to use echo here. And then up here, if I look at the output, instead of that star, we've got that 5,000, that value for the price on the object. Likewise, if I wanted to put the title, I could simply use dot notation to get the title property off of this object. So as you can see, now we can get the word example. All right, so after discovering this, I thought to myself, what can we actually use this for? And I tested out a bunch of stuff. Nothing really useful came up. If we go back to the LinkedIn post here, Virgil shares his code here that you can take a look at. And for him writing some complicated Liquid in a very specific use case, it was handy, but I couldn't find any simple examples where this is actually super necessary. Because now that we have, I wrote meta fields here, but I meant to say meta objects. Now that we have meta objects in Shopify and they're very easy to use and interact with, the need to create our own objects in Liquid doesn't seem to be a very useful pattern. And I couldn't think of any code that I was working on currently where I actually needed it. But to give you an example, having a group of properties together in a single object might be handy for passing that information into a particular snippet in the example I have here. So let's just say, for instance, I was trying to come up with a different object that doesn't exist within Shopify, and I came up with this idea for a bundle. So here you can see, maybe we have a bundle which is two products combined. So I've called this one the snowboard bundle, and I've got two properties here, product one, where I'm putting in an actual product object of a product that I have in my store, and then I'm putting in again a second product that is an actual product object. So I can actually put objects within objects using this system, and then I can pass that single object into this bundle card snippet, which I haven't created yet. So let me go into my snippets here and create that file right now, bundle-card. And to save some time here, I'm just going to copy and paste the code in and hit save. Now you can see, actually I didn't hit save over here, did I? So I'll hit save on both of them. And as you can see over here, now within this bundle card snippet, we can use that single parameter of bundle, which is an object, and it does have multiple objects stored within it, within these product 1 and product 2 parameters. We can reference everything from this root object of bundle, including the name and the titles and prices of the products within that one object. So if I go over to my preview right here, you'll see that we've got the title of our custom object, which is the bundle. And as you can see, it includes these 2 products. And the price here is just a function of some math. So if I go back to my code here, let me maybe break this up onto multiple lines so you can see. I'm taking the price of the first product, adding the price of the second product, and then timesing it by 80%, and then using the money filter to format that nicely at a 20% discount. So this is quite flexible code. This snippet, I can pass in any bundle that has the same data structure, and it'll give me a similar result. It will create a price which is 20% off buying the 2 products individually. Okay, but that is as far as I could go with finding a general use case. It's not exactly something that you might need to start using today or tomorrow, but something really cool to have in your arsenal, I think. Going back over to my Notion document here, I am still looking for a pattern in which you can create an array of objects. That seems to still be impossible in Shopify. I definitely tried it using this new object construction method with the default filter. Maybe I'll give you a little show of how I did that, or how I attempted to do it, I should say. Let me paste in some code here. And as you can see, how we usually create arrays in Shopify Liquid, the only way we can do it is by creating a string and then splitting that string, therefore getting us a list of strings. So we can create arrays in Liquid, but we just can't create anything other than an array of strings, it seems. So here's my attempt at creating an array of objects. I set up a captcha here, and I looped through an array of products within an example collection. And then I tried to create a new object that just had the title and the price of that product. And the idea here was just to create a simplified array of this products array here with only the title and the price. So this right here, this captcha gives me a string. And of course, the comma here separates each item in the array, which I can use to split the array. And then I can try and loop through it here. But if we take a look on the front end at the result of this, you'll see nothing comes out. So unfortunately, still looks like we aren't able to create arrays of objects. To finish off our list of tips and tricks here, this one's a very simple one. As you can see, we've got Octavian Contest again, who is letting people know about the structured data filter in Shopify. So obviously this must be pretty new. Dawn 15 has this, but Dawn 14 doesn't. So this is pretty simple. It's just a little helper to generate code that we would have to otherwise write ourselves. As far as I'm aware, this is pretty simple code to write. The format is always the same, so it would just require a little bit of copy and paste. But now Shopify have created a filter that just generates it for you. So if we look at Dawn version 14 or any version of Dawn before 14, we can see between the schema and the liquid code, you can see here that we've got this script with the type of application LD plus JSON. So this is our JSON schema. That is an SEO thing. I can't say I'm super expert in SEO, but this obviously provides some metadata to search engines. And as you can see here, you had to write out all the code yourself or copy it from another example and paste it in. Now, if we look at Dawn version 15, which I have linked over here, and look in the same code file, maybe if I type LD plus JSON, we can just skip straight ahead to it. Yep. And as you can see here, instead of having to write all the liquid code to create the structured data, we can instead pass it through this filter, and that will output the exact same result. So that covers my top liquid tips. I encourage you guys to follow some of these guys on LinkedIn. Either pause the video, find their names, and add that into LinkedIn, or you can ask me in the comments for their names. I would definitely recommend it because there's some really smart people out there on LinkedIn talking about Shopify Liquid. So definitely check these guys out. So there you have it, guys, the top 5 LinkedIn posts regarding Shopify Liquid that popped up on my feed since following and interacting with Shopify content on that platform. In order to get this content coming up on your feed as well, simply start following people in the Shopify developer space that are posting about this stuff and react and comment on their posts, and LinkedIn will start to serve more of that kind of content to you. You can even start by following me on LinkedIn. I've posted occasionally over the last few years, but I do plan on posting more in 2025. So stay tuned for that. And finally, if you really want to learn the essentials of Shopify theme development, definitely check out shopifythemedeveloper.com, which, as I mentioned earlier in the video, is having a huge sale right now. So if you're watching this video within the first 4 days of posting, don't hesitate and head over there right now to check out the specials. Thanks for watching, happy coding, and I'll see you on the next video.